Sleep ship archive. Transmission initiated. Vessel status stable. All primary systems nominal. Cryosleep monitoring nominal. Archive integrity confirmed. Voyage year 214. Tonight's record comes from the observational archives of old Earth. The subject, the night sky. What it was and what it actually was, which were not the same thing. The sky that appeared overhead on a clear night was not a view of the present. It was a record of the past, delivered at the speed of light, still arriving. Everything you saw had already happened. Some of it had happened a very long time before the light reached you. This record is preserved for the colonists aboard this vessel, for those who will need to know what it was to stand at the base of a clear atmosphere at night and look outward at the universe from inside it. For those who will one day stand on a different surface under a different sky and carry in the body the record of what this one was. You may rest now. The archive will do the work of the night. You are lying down, back against the earth, weight distributed across whatever surface you have chosen. Grass, stone, warm sand still holding the heat of the afternoon, a hillside above the lights of the nearest town. The body is horizontal. The chest rises and falls. The hands are open at the sides or resting on the chest or lying palm down against the ground, receiving the faint warmth the surface still gives back from the day. The eyes are open. There's something the body does when it's horizontal under an open sky. Not the posture of looking. You can look at the sky while standing, while walking, while moving through the world. But horizontal, with the weight taken by the earth and the sky the full field of vision, the body settles into a different relationship with what is above. The sky is not something you are approaching. You are underneath it. It is overhead in the full sense. Not a view, not a scene, but a direction that has no end in it. You have always known this sky. Not necessarily these stars, not necessarily this particular arrangement visible from this place at this season, at this hour. But the experience, the body horizontal, the field of dark above, the resolving of points of light from the dark as the eye adjusts. This is something the body knows. It is an older knowledge than any fact you were told about what the sky contains. It was in the body before you had words for what you were seeing. The darkness comes first. On a clear night, away from artificial light, the sky begins as dark. Not the dark of a closed room or the dark of a door shut against light, a textured dark, a dark with variation, a dark that is not uniform and not empty. The eye requires time to adjust from the bright world of surfaces and light into the darker register of the night sky. In that adjustment period, the sky appears simply dark. And then, as the chemistry of the eye shifts, the stars resolve. Not all at once. The brightest first, then more. Then, if the dark is deep enough and the air clear enough, a kind of haze across the sky that is not cloud and not fog. The accumulated light of stars, too many and too faint to separate individually, present as a streak of pale light from one horizon to the other. This appeared and was named. Every civilization that had access to dark skies named this streak. The word differing, the recognition the same. A river, a road, a seam in the sky where something vast and close made its presence felt. What it was could not be resolved by the unaided eye. That it was there was unmistakable. The body settles, the stars are above, the dark between them is above. The sky is not what you think it is. What you are looking at has already happened. The light from the nearest stars left those stars years before it arrived at your eye. Years of travel across a distance with no medium to slow it, arriving at the speed at which light moves through vacuum, which is as fast as anything in the universe moves. and still it took years. The nearest star system beyond the sun, years. Others, decades. The ones that appear bright and close, still years, still decades. Still a gap between what they were doing when the light left and what they are doing now that cannot be closed. Some of what you see in the night sky left its source before you were born. Some of it left before any living person could have remembered it leaving. Some of it has been traveling since before the species existed in its current form. The light left. It traveled. It arrived. The event that produced it is part of the past. You are always looking at the past. This is not unique to the night sky. The light from a face across a table takes a small fraction of a second to travel from surface to eye. And technically, you are always perceiving the world as it was a moment ago, not as it is. But the gap is too small to feel. The night sky makes the gap felt. It stretches it from fractions of a second into years, into decades, into longer. The gap becomes the entire subject. You have always lived slightly behind the present. Not only when looking at stars, the world you experience is always assembled from information that has already arrived. The eye sends signals, the mind builds an image, the image represents something that was. The present you perceive is always a reconstruction from the recent past. The night sky does not make this true. It makes it visible. It makes it long enough to think about. The star you are looking at was doing that when the light left. What it is doing now, you do not know. You cannot know. That information is currently somewhere between you and it, traveling toward you and will not arrive for years. The light arrives, not what is happening at the source right now, not what the source will do. The record of what the source was doing when the light left. The proof that something was there producing light in the direction you are looking at a time that is now in the past. The sky is a record, not a window. Everything you see has already occurred. The light is the proof that it occurred. You are receiving the archive of the sky, the version of these stars that existed when the light you are seeing left them. The sky is not a window. The sky is a record of what was. You are looking at time. The stars flicker, not the planets. The planets are close enough and large enough that they arrive at the eye as resolvable disks rather than points, and the atmosphere's effect averages out across the disk. But the stars, which are distant enough that no telescope on the surface could make them anything but points of light, flicker. The point trembles. The brightness varies slightly and rapidly. The position shifts a little in one direction, then returns, then shifts again. Not dramatically, not so that you would confuse the star for something moving, but visibly, especially when the star is near the horizon and the atmosphere is thickest between you and the sky. This is the atmosphere. The light is not shaking, the star is not moving. The atmosphere between you and the sky is moving. The constant, invisible circulation of air at different temperatures and densities, bending the path of the light slightly as it passes through, in ways that change continuously with the motion of the air. The result at the eye is a slight, rapid variation in the apparent brightness and position of the point of light. The star appears to tremble because you are looking at it through a moving medium. You are not looking directly at the stars. You are looking at them through a medium. You are inside the atmosphere, looking out through it. The same atmosphere that filters radiation and carries sound and holds the warmth and provides the oxygen in the breath you are drawing as you look up. The same medium, and the medium affects what you see. The sky you are looking at is processed by the atmosphere before it arrives at your eye. The stars as they appear from above the atmosphere, from a vessel in orbit, from open space, are steadier, cleaner, fixed in position without the trembling. What you see from the surface is the atmosphere's version of them. This is not a flaw in what you are seeing. The trembling is the signature of the medium you are inside. You were never looking at the night sky directly. You were always looking at it from within something, through the layer that made it possible for you to look at all. The layer that keeps the pressure your body requires, the layer that filters the radiation, the layer that keeps you warm enough to be lying outside at night looking up at anything. The atmosphere was between you and the universe at all times. The stars trembled because you were inside something. You were always inside something, looking out. The universe, seen from the surface of old Earth, was the universe seen from inside the atmosphere. There was no version of the night sky that was not filtered, not processed, not carried through the medium before it arrived. The trembling was the truth of the view. The sky as seen by creatures who lived inside a thin layer of gas wrapped around a rock, looking outward through the layer, receiving what passed through it. The condition held. The stars trembled. The sky appears small. Standing at the surface and looking up at the night sky, the dome of it seems to have a scale the eye can comprehend. The distance from horizon to horizon, the arc of it overhead, the apparent distance to the stars. All of it fits within a range the mind can hold. The night sky looks like something of a certain size, something you could map, something you could point to and describe from edge to edge. It is not. The stars you are looking at are not arranged on a surface at a fixed distance. They are not distributed across a dome or a ceiling or a sphere of specific radius. They are scattered through a volume with no far wall, not arranged at any consistent depth, not organized in any way relative to each other that the eye can resolve. The pattern the eye sees is the projection of those scattered points onto the apparent surface of the sky. The flat image the eye makes from depth. What looks like a field of lights on a dome is actually a view through depth that has no end. The sky appears small. The thing you were looking at was not. There is nothing to reach. You have no way to travel to any of the stars you are seeing. Not quickly, not in any time frame the body can hold. The distance is not large in the way the distance between cities is large. A thing that diminishes as you travel, that ends when you arrive. The distance is beyond interaction. The stars are there. Their light is arriving at you. They are present, but they are present in the way a thing can be present while being completely beyond reach. Not hidden, not inaccessible in the way of a locked door, not something that could be reached with sufficient effort. Simply too far. In a different category of proximity than anything else you have ever attempted to close. Present but untouchable. The light arrived. The source could not. These are not contradictory. The light moves at the maximum speed at which anything moves through space. And it still took years to get here. The sources of the light are at distances that have no equivalent in any experience of travel or effort. You are looking at them. You are receiving them in the form of their light. That is as close as it is possible to be. The sky contains things you will never approach. This is not loss. It is the shape of the thing. The night sky was always a view of what could not be reached, could not be held, could not be gone to in any time frame that mattered to a life. The light was the whole of what arrived. The light was everything the sky could give. And the light arrived continuously, every clear night, to every eye that looked up. That was enough. It was already enough. The stars appear fixed. Night after night, they return to the same positions. The patterns are recognizable. The same arrangement, the same brightness relationships, the same orientation of each point of light relative to every other. A person who looked up at the night sky on a given night and returned to look at it a year later would find the same stars in the same positions. Over a lifetime of looking, the stars would not move. The sky would appear to be the same sky, the same configuration, stable across all the time available for observing it. They are moving. Every star in the night sky is in motion, not fixed, not static, not at rest. Each is moving through space on its own path, at speeds that are real and significant, producing positions that change continuously. But the distances are so large that the motion at human timescales produces changes too small for the unaided eye to detect. A star that has been moving for a lifetime has moved, from the perspective of an observer on old Earth, by less than the width of a finger held against the sky. What appears fixed is motion at a time scale beyond human attention. The apparent stillness of the stars is not stillness. It is a rate of change so slow that the entire recorded history of human civilization, all the looking, all the naming, all the navigation, all the generations of sky watchers, constitutes a single brief observation. The constellations were the same shapes when the first people named them as when the last people sailed by them. They will be different shapes in 10,000 years. In 100,000, noticeably different. The sky that seemed permanent was always changing. The permanence was the time scale, which was long enough that permanent and changing were, for all practical purposes, the same. You look up and see stillness. You are looking at movement. The stillness is the time scale, not the absence of change, but the scale of change, which makes a human life feel like a single glance at something that has been in motion far longer than there has been anything to look at it. The sky was always in motion. The stars were always going somewhere. The patterns were the snapshot available to the eye in this brief window, on this planet, from this angle. They were real. They were what was there, and they were always beneath the appearance of permanence in motion. The pattern you knew was yours to keep. The constellations were placed there by the ones who needed them. This is not a criticism. The sky does not organize itself into patterns. The stars in any given constellation are at completely different distances from the planet, not neighbors in space, not associated in any physical way. They happen to appear in proximity when seen from this one point of view, on this one planet, in this one brief window of astronomical time. From any other position in space, the pattern would not exist. From inside the constellation, looking back, there would be no pattern at all. The pattern was the eye's contribution. The mind finds shape in a field it cannot hold individually. It finds the line between points, the figure in the distribution, the form that makes the unfamiliar into something that can be carried. The ones who looked up and named what they saw were not inventing. They were finding the pattern available from this angle, at this moment. The sky provided the points of light. The mind provided the lines between them. The patterns have names: the hunter, the bear, the river, the twins, the scorpion that rises when the hunter sets. The two of them positioned so that from the surface of old Earth, they are never overhead at the same time, a relation that exists nowhere in space except as a consequence of this one observer's position. Some of these were in you before you understood them. Some set of points of light in the night sky had names in your understanding. Names that connected them to the people who named them, to the stories that made them memorable. to the accumulated inheritance of meaning placed on a sky that placed no meaning there itself. The sky did not tell you what it meant. The ones who were looking before you told you what they found. What they found was preserved, carried forward in every generation that looked up and recognized the same shapes and passed the names on. The patterns were theirs. They are yours now. The stars are not quiet. Hold this for a moment. The stars you are looking at are burning, undergoing processes of enormous energy at temperatures the body has no reference for. Each is throwing material outward continuously. Each is radiating in all directions. Flares, eruptions, active, ongoing, energetic in ways that dwarf any process the surface of a planet produces. The sky is silent. This is the quiet wrongness of the night sky, and it is worth letting it be wrong for a moment rather than explaining it away. The sky is full of enormous, ongoing, energetic processes, things that would, transposed to any human scale, be impossible to be near. Things that are producing radiation and particle streams and magnetic activity right now, continuously in the same directions you are looking. And from the surface of old Earth, at night, lying on the ground, looking up, there is nothing, no sound, no heat beyond what the sun already provides during the day, no sensation of any of it. Nothing arrives except the light. The silence was total. Not the silence of a quiet room where the air carries no sound because nothing is producing any. Not the silence of distance, the way a storm at the edge of hearing is still present as a low suggestion. The silence of the night sky was complete. Not a diminished sound, but the absence of the category entirely. There was nothing to carry sound from the stars to you. There was no medium between you and them through which vibration could travel. The processes that were occurring, energetic, ongoing, real, produced no signal that could reach you as sound, because sound requires a medium and space has none. You were standing beneath a sky full of enormous activity. You experienced it as silence. The stars were burning. You heard nothing. The distance was so complete, the separation so absolute, that the only thing that crossed it was the light. The one thing that required no medium, that moved through vacuum at the speed that was its nature. Everything else the stars were doing stayed where the stars were doing it. The light alone made the crossing. The night sky was not peaceful because the universe was peaceful. It was silent because you were too far away for anything except the light to reach you. The silence was the measure of the distance. The silence was what the distance felt like, made audible, or rather made inaudible in a way that the body noticed. You looked up at an active sky and heard nothing. The nothing was real. It was a fact about the universe. It was the size of the space between you and everything you were looking at, expressed as absence of sound. The light still came. Nothing else did. Some of what you saw may no longer exist. Light travels fast and distance is long, and time passes for the things that produce light, the same as it passes for everything else. The star you are looking at sent this light in the past. What the star has done since that light left, you do not know. You cannot know. The information about what it is doing now is currently somewhere between you and it, traveling toward you, and will not arrive for years. What it was doing when the light left is what the light carries. What it is doing now is not in this light. It is in the light that will arrive later. It is possible to look at a point of light in the night sky and not know whether the source is still there. The light is there. The light is real. It is arriving, and the eye receives it, and the visual system processes it, and you see a star. But the star, whether it still exists in the form that produced this light, or has since changed or has ended, this you cannot determine from the light alone. The light is the record of what was. It is not a report of what is. This is not disturbing. It is simply the condition of knowing anything across distance. All knowledge of distant things is knowledge of how they were, not how they are. The gap is always there. For close things, the face across a table, the tree outside the window, the gap is so small it disappears. For the stars, the gap is real and worth holding. You were looking at records. The record was real. What it recorded was real. You were receiving the proof that something was there in that direction, producing light at a time that is now past. That proof is complete. The light arrived, the transit was accomplished. Whatever the source is now, the record of what it was is in the light that reached your eye. The sky was an archive. Every point of light a piece of proof. Every pattern a set of records arriving from different distances, different depths, different moments in the past, combined by the eye into a single field, a single view, the version of the sky available from this planet at this moment. A composite record, an archive made of arrival. You knew some of these, not as facts, as presences. The sky had familiar points of light, ones that returned to the same position each year, ones the body expected in certain directions at certain times, ones whose names you had learned and kept not because you studied them but because they were simply there, often enough, in a way that accumulated into recognition. The sky was not a uniform field of unfamiliar light. It had geography. It had landmarks. It had the ones you looked for without deciding to look for them. The familiarity built the way any familiarity builds. Through repetition, through return, through the accumulation of the same thing encountered across enough seasons and years that it stopped being new and became simply known. The sky in winter was different from the sky in summer, and both were expected, and both were recognized. And the shift between them as the seasons changed was its own kind of knowledge, not learned deliberately but acquired by being under the sky often enough to notice the change and expect the return. People learn the sky the way they learned anything that repeated, not by studying it, by being under it, by sleeping outside on enough nights, by working early enough that the sky before dawn was familiar, by moving through enough seasons that the shifts became anticipated. The eye began to know where to look before the mind had articulated what it was looking for. The body memorized the sky the way it memorizes anything repeated long enough, not as information stored, but as expectation built into the pattern of attention. Some people knew the sky in more detail than this. Navigators who used the positions of stars as reference points for location. Who could read the sky the way the sky could be read if you understood what each position meant in terms of where you were on the surface of the planet. The sky as map. The reliable reference against which position could be checked when no land was visible and the water extended in every direction without distinction. Not fixed. The sky moved across the night, the stars rising and setting, the North Star holding near still while the others wheeled around it. But fixed enough, reliable enough, predictable enough that generations of navigators trusted the sky to tell them where they were. Every ocean was navigated by the same stars. The same light that arrives at the eye of a person lying on a hillside also navigated ships across oceans that had no other landmarks. The same points of light served as both beauty and as instrument, depending on what you needed from them. The sky did not distinguish between these uses. It was simply there, providing what it provided to whoever was looking. The sky belonged to no one. It was available to everyone who looked. Light is a physical thing. It travels. It has energy. When it arrives at a surface, something happens. The energy of the light is absorbed or reflected or transmitted, and the surface is changed by the encounter, however slightly. This is not metaphor. Light does physical work. Light can warm surfaces. Light can drive chemical reactions. Light powers the photosynthesis that produced the oxygen in the atmosphere of old Earth. The light arrives, the molecule absorbs it, the reaction proceeds. The light does the work. When starlight arrives at the eye, something physical occurs. The light enters through the opening at the front of the eye, passes through the lens, and arrives at the retina, the layer at the back of the eye that is specialized for exactly this encounter. There, the arriving light triggers chemical changes in molecules built for this purpose. The chemical change generates an electrical signal. The signal travels along the optic nerve to the visual processing centers of the brain. The brain constructs from these signals the experience of seeing. The photon has ended its journey. It has been traveling for years, for decades, for longer than a human lifetime in some cases, moving through the vacuum of space at the speed at which light moves through vacuum, which it has maintained continuously across the entire distance. It passed through the thin upper atmosphere, through the weather layer, through the air above the place you were lying, through the lens of the eye. And at the retina, it triggered a chemical change, and the journey was complete. You were the place it stopped. You are the terminus of a journey that began at a star, the light that left that star. Light produced in the stellar core, released outward in all directions, of which only a tiny fraction was aimed at the precise location in space that the planet occupied. And of that fraction, only an infinitesimal amount passed through the opening of your particular eye at the particular moment you happened to be looking. That light arrived. It ended its journey in the chemistry of your retina, in the electrical signal of your optic nerve, in the image your visual system constructed from the event of a photon arriving. The light was not the star, but the light was real, and the star made it, and it arrived in you, and you received it. And the receiving was a physical event. The body changed, however slightly, by the arrival of something that had traveled a very long way to get there. The eye did not passively witness the light. The eye transduced it, converted it, made it into something the body could carry forward. You carry this. The record is in you, not as information retained, not as knowledge that can be located and retrieved, but in the way the body carries what it has physically received. The light arrived. The body registered the arrival. The record of the sky is built from those arrivals. Each night, each clear hour, each moment you looked up, and the light that had been traveling entered the eye and ended there. You were always the place it was arriving. The darkness is not empty. The night sky to the unaided eye is a field of dark punctuated by light. The eye can see the light. The eye cannot see what occupies the dark between the stars, because what occupies the dark is not visible in the wavelengths the eye is built to receive. But the dark is not absence. It is not the void it looks like. The space between stars contains gas, thin, diffuse, present in densities far below anything that registers as atmosphere, far below any threshold at which the body would notice any pressure or composition at all. But present, the hydrogen that accumulates in the regions between stellar systems, the remnants of older stellar processes, material thrown off when stars end, dispersing outward, thinning over time into the medium from which the next generation of stars will eventually form. Dust, field, slow process. The dark between the stars is the medium the stars came from and will return to, and from which the next stars will be drawn. The cycle of stellar birth and stellar death, and the dispersal of material back into the interstellar medium, and the slow accumulation of that material into new stars. This cycle is invisible in the night sky as the eye experiences it. The gas and dust of the interstellar medium cannot be seen without instruments designed to detect light at wavelengths the eye does not process. To the eye, the sky is dark between the stars. The dark is not what it looks like. There are also the stars you cannot see. The ones present, radiating, doing everything stars do, but too faint from the necessary distance to trigger the chemistry of vision under ordinary conditions. The night sky is full of light that arrives at the eye and is insufficient to register. The darkness in the night sky is partly the darkness of the limit of the eye, the enormous number of stars present, real, radiating, but below the threshold of what the eye can receive as light. The darkness you look at is full of what you cannot see. This is not absence. It is the edge of a capacity. The eye was built for the surface of a planet, for the distances and light levels and conditions of a world with one star nearby and everything else very far away. It was not built for the astronomical. It was built for the immediate. The night sky was at the edge of what it could receive. What it could not receive was still there. The darkness held what the light could not carry to you. What the sky meant cannot be contained in any single account. It meant different things to every person who looked up at it. Different things in different eras, different cultures, different circumstances, different states of mind and season and need. It was the origin of calendars. Because the sky was the most reliable marker of time the surface of the planet offered. The sun's daily path, the moon's monthly changes, the stars' annual return to the same positions, all of it precise enough and consistent enough to build the year around. Before any human-made instrument existed to measure time, the sky was the instrument. It was the origin of navigation, for the same reason. Reliable, consistent, predictable. The same reference points every night for every navigator who needed to know where they were relative to the surface of the planet. It was the origin of stories, the figures in the patterns providing a surface for narrative, for the accounts that needed to last longer than any individual telling. A story placed in the sky would return every year, visible to everyone, requiring no physical medium to be preserved in. The sky was the first durable record. The story written there would return each season for as long as the sky could be seen. It was, for many people, the presence of something larger than the life at the surface, not in a way this record will define. The experience of looking at the night sky produced in many people the recognition that the context in which they existed was larger than anything they could hold. older than anything they knew, older than the species, older than the planet in some cases. This recognition took different forms in different traditions and different individuals. Some found in it the presence of something ordered and purposeful. Some found in it something indifferent, and found that indifference clarifying rather than frightening. Some found in it simply the scale of things, which was its own kind of knowledge, to understand, bodily, that the world was not the whole of what existed. The sky was the original record. Before anything was written, the sky was read. Before there were instruments to extend what the eye could detect, the eye looked up and memorized what it saw. The sky was the first text available to the species. The one that could not be altered, could not be burned, could not be lost or forgotten as long as there were clear nights and eyes to look. It was simply there, every clear night, available. What was seen in it changed with every generation of looking. What was there did not. There is no night sky like that on the vessel. The ship has viewports, clear panels in the hull through which the stars outside can be seen. The stars are real. The same stars at different positions now than they occupied when you were last on the surface. The journey having moved you relative to them, but real. Their light arriving at the viewport glass and passing through and entering any eye that is positioned to receive it. The physical process is the same. The light is real, but the experience is different. On the surface of a planet lying under the night sky, the sky is everywhere. It is above and to every side from horizon to horizon, the full dome of it present to the entire field of vision of a person lying on the ground. There is no edge to the sky as experienced from below. It extends from where you are to wherever it ends, which from below is nowhere you can see. The apparent dome has no boundary your eye can find. The sky is not a framed view. It is the total field of a direction. A viewport has an edge. What is outside the viewport is the hull of the vessel. The stars visible through the viewport are visible through it. The stars outside the frame are not visible. They are there, their light is arriving at the hull. But the hull is not transparent, and the field is not the field. What the viewport offers is a view of space, which is not the same thing as the night sky. The night sky is a full environment. A viewport is a frame. There is also no atmosphere. The stars visible through the viewport do not flicker. There is no medium between the viewport glass and the stars to bend the path of the light. No turbulent air, no weather layer, no currents of warm and cold air at different densities. The stars are steady and clean and fixed in their positions without the trembling that the atmosphere produced. This is closer to what the stars actually are. It is nothing like what they looked like from the surface. The trembling was the signature of the medium you were inside. Without the medium, the signature is absent. The view is accurate, and it does not feel like the sky. It feels like space, which is what it is. There is also no ground, no weight of a planet pressing against the back of the body as you lie on it. No sense of being held against a surface by the gravity that goes all the way down through the rock to the core of the world. No horizon to frame the dome against. No orientation of sky above and earth below, the body at the boundary between. The night sky was an experience that required a planet, required gravity and atmosphere and a surface to place the body against, and a horizon to give the dome its frame. None of those things are present here, and yet the record is in you. The sky you looked at before the voyage. However many times you looked, whatever you saw, whether you knew the names of what you were seeing or simply lay under it and received it without words. That record is present, not as a recording that can be located and accessed, in the way a body holds what it has received. The light from those stars entered the eye. The chemical change occurred. The signal traveled. The image was made. The body was changed, however slightly, by each arrival. All of it is in there. The accumulated record of every clear night, every looked-up moment, every time the light came and the eye received it. The light arrived. You were there. You received it. You carry it now. The night sky of old Earth was not a spectacle. It was a condition, present above every surface on the planet, available to any eye that looked upward on a clear night, unchanged in any way that mattered across the entire span of human attention to it. The same stars, the same patterns, the same light, crossing the same distances and arriving at the same speed and entering eyes that had been looking for as long as the species had existed. Every person who ever looked up at a clear night sky was receiving the same light, not at the same moment. The planet's rotation and the cycle of seasons meant different stars were overhead at different times and places. But the same light in the aggregate, the same sky available to all of them, requiring nothing of them except the willingness to look. The sky kept no record of who had seen it. The body did. The body received the light and held the record of the receiving, not as a fact that can be retrieved, as the way the body holds everything it has physically encountered, built into the pattern of recognition, into what the eye expects when it looks toward that direction of dark, into the particular adjustment that occurs when the eye is moving from the lit world into the domain of the night sky and waiting for the stars to resolve from the dark. You have always been the place the light arrives, not only the light of the night sky. Everything the body has received across the entire span of its existence. The light of every morning, the warmth of every afternoon, the light from every face that looked at you, the light from every surface you looked at. The body is the terminus of all of it, the place where the light ends its journey and becomes something else, becomes signal, becomes image, becomes the world as experienced from inside. The night sky was one portion of that. The light arrived from very far away. The distance it had crossed was beyond any frame the body has for distance. And it arrived at the eye and ended there, and the body carried what the eye had made of it, and carries it still. The light arrived. You were always the place it was arriving. The record is in you. Sleep ship archive. Transmission complete. Vessel status stable. Cryosleep monitoring nominal. All systems nominal. Archive records sealed and filed. Voyage continues. The light is still arriving. Please continue restorative sleep.